All right, welcome to Office Hours, where
Happy Thursday, everyone.
happy Thursday. Welcome to Office Hours, where Ashley and I discuss what's going on in social trends and how you can harness those trends for your own success. Um, we got some interesting things to talk about this week. First off, how's your December so far?
Good, busy. I feel like we always say when December starts, you feel like it should still be November, but then it's gone before you know it and it's January. So I'm already feeling that, and we're not even a weekend. So it's exciting.
Yeah, yesterday was my daughter's birthday, and I was like, oh, it's 3 weeks till Christmas. Like, It's
Mhm.
it's all like this year is almost over and December just goes by so fast because everyone's trying to jam pack as much stuff as possible into their month. Um,
Mhm. Well, I feel like it's that whole, you're looking back at the year behind, you're planning for the year ahead, and I don't know, maybe some industries have a lull. I don't know that tech and mortgage are those industries, sadly. But it's just interesting to see how this month kind of is a middle ground, but it also compounds everything.
yeah. But lots of I think interesting social stuff to talk about. I think let's start off by talking about what we are doing this December when it comes to
Yeah.
social because we've been talking about it in a different number of different places. But let's talk about the December content challenge. Um, you and I put together the 2024 December content challenge, which is essentially a calendar of a different prompt every day of something to post, something
Mhm.
to um, talk about, mention, discuss on your social media to give you something every day to help with that consistency and get you ready for 2025, but also to engage your audience. Why don't you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, so I think the value here is that I think like we talked about, December's busy. It's easy to fall off and kind of put social on the back burner. There's also a lot more holiday and seasonal content out there, so there's more to compete with. And I think what we were seeing is a lot of loan officers when they get on social media, they have the education stuff down. They know, what they're experts at and they know how to talk about that. But social media is also somewhere to have fun and to connect with your audience on a more personal level. They want to know you, they don't just want to know who you are at your desk for 8 hours of the day, right? They want to know who you are 100% of the time, 24 hours a day. So we focus most of these prompts on actually like just kind of fun holiday themed activities, prompts, things that you might be doing, things that could involve the community. And you could interpret any of these things however you want. And I think that's the part we want to encourage is giving you a quick topic that doesn't seem intimidating, it isn't too hard, but that you can take and kind of turn into something fun and experimental and then see what people engage with. Because I think that so often we default to the just I've got to educate and stick there, but it really quickly gets monotonous and it's kind of like, well, why should I stick around if I don't need that information or if I already know this information? Like, why am I sticking around? Well, it's because it's Brandon and Brandon loves movies and Brandon's interesting and Brandon has hot takes on the news. And I want to know what Brandon's thoughts are on everything in addition to the education that you're providing me. Right. So with our users, this is kind of a challenge to make it easy, to stay consistent, to get a little more creative, and especially to hopefully jumpstart your engagement before the new year starts. Because I feel like what also happens is everyone makes the New Year's resolution in January that, oh, I'm going to do social media and I'm going to get better at it now. Well, if you have kind of let the month before slip, you're going to have a much harder, much higher hill to climb to get back up to where you were. And that can be really frustrating and discouraging to start out with. Whereas if you're doing it now, then you're building up that runway. And then come January, you're going to have a great platform for saying, all right, now I'm feeling energized. Let's get back into this and let's really see what we can do to make this take off.
Yeah, and what I love about what we put together here is that all of these things are really simple. Most of these things are just you creating content around things that you're already doing. You're already decorating your house for the holidays. You're already, um, going to visit places, whether it's to go look at Christmas lights or to go get hot chocolate or to go, see the Nutcracker suite or something.
Mhm.
You have these traditions that you're already doing. Share those. Find a way to
Yeah.
share those because and invite others to share those traditions back with you. And, this isn't Christmas specific. This is,
Mhm.
we've made this to be as holiday um agnostic as possible because, th- the holiday, this time of year is unique for everyone, and there's so much opportunity. And I think that getting into that rhythm of doing something, it doesn't have to be a post every day, but doing something on social every day that feels like it's moving forward is, in my opinion, the best way to get that momentum. So that, like you said, you're not hitting in January and saying, all right, now that it's January, I'm going to get started. This,
Right.
I think, is going to give you that runway so that you can actually take off in January. You've got a whole month of content under your belt that people have been engaging with, and you've been engaging back, and you've got the reps in to where you feel comfortable, and you've already made, 7 or 8 videos where,
Mhm.
if you're someone that's like, "Oh, I don't like how I look on camera," or "I don't feel good on camera," get those 8 videos out, and I think by the end of this, people are gonna feel a lot more confident with the content that they're putting out there. And
Totally.
so
Well, statistically, right, it takes 8 videos to start feeling confident on camera and start feeling like, "Oh, I know what I'm doing here," and I feel like, honestly, it takes more than that to really you don't sit there and go, "Now I know what I'm doing." It's just
yeah.
more like a, "Oh, okay, I've done this enough times that I kind of get it, and now I'm getting into a rhythm." But I think too, the beauty of this is even if we say do a post or do a video, you can do it however you want. Like, I think the holiday decor prompts for today, I have this idea where I'm like, my parents both decorate a different tree in very different ways. And so it'd be fun. I'm gonna post photos of those with, label which one you like or label help me, decide which decor style is more like yours. Because some families have many. And I'm also obsessed with gnomes. So I'm probably gonna post something about gnomes at some point because I think they're hilarious. And I know that's controversial. Not everyone loves the gnomes. But stuff like that is just what makes people go, "Oh,
The
me too."
gnomes?
Yes, like
Is there a contingent of anti-gnome
well,
people?
some people just find them really ugly, and I think there are ugly ones out there, sadly, but, like, if you find the cute little gnomes, like, I love those, but my roommate thinks they're the creepiest thing ever, so she's always like, "Oh, you brought home more," and I'm like, "I'm sorry." So,
That's insane, that's interesting.
it's a
Me,
whole
my
thing. People have their
yeah.
own mascot, like the
Yeah,
red truck.
mine is I've got, Star Wars ornaments on this tree. In fact, I just
There you
filmed
go.
an entire video about me putting these ornaments on my tree for my personal TikTok,
Mhm.
and then I'm gonna be sharing a video talking about this tree, for the content challenge for today's content.
I love that. See, I think it just helps everyone it helps us have fun with our content because I think that's something we also forget as professionals. When you're doing this for business, it's really easy to just think, "Oh, I have to be so professional and I have to," you know, it's just easy to get boring. And sadly, all the trend reports are coming out about right now, like yesterday and today. And a lot of them are showing that brands and creators who take risks and are more entertaining with their content are seeing way more success because honestly that is what social media was built for. It was built for entertainment and connection, not necessarily social selling and advertising. And while that is a huge perk and a way to use it, I think the people who are learning how to blend those two things and kind of advertise and promote through humor or through intrigue and then follow up with educational informational stuff once people are already interested, they're seeing the most success, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the trends for 2024 that, like, what are the big trends that we saw this year? And I guess after that, let's talk about what are the trends going into 2025 that we think we're going to start seeing.
Yeah, I like it. What
Um,
trend do you want to start with from last year?
so this year, I think the big push just all around was around authenticity and
Mhm,
and um highlighting individuals rather than companies. And
mhm.
we were following that trend ourselves. We've followed that trend ourselves with our socials and talking less about like social coach as an entity and being more about the individuals at social coach talking about these different things, sharing our insights, sharing you had your post go like crazy viral on LinkedIn,
Yeah,
uh,
one of
and
my
that
Tip
was just
Tuesdays.
being like, yeah, it's just a tip Tuesday that you do for social coach, but because it was you, it went viral. If that had been totally social coach branded and all this stuff, I don't know if it would have done nearly as well. So authenticity was
Yeah.
definitely a big one this year.
Well, I think what the hard thing is, like, authenticity feels hard to define, and I think for people who are newer to social or unfamiliar with social, it's like, "How what do you mean be authentic?" And
Sure.
I think what it comes down to is don't feel like you're trying to get something out of some of your audience when you're posting. Like, if you're sitting there and it's pretty clear that you're wanting them to call you for business, or you're trying to get a transaction, or you're trying to convince them to go for a mortgage even if they can't afford it, that's where people kind of get like that, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know. I don't really want to be sold to. But instead, if you can approach it from a, hey, let me just give you information. Like this misconception, if you think you can't buy a home until you have 20% saved up, I just want to let you know you don't have to. Like, just so you know, like my dad and I were talking about this literally over Thanksgiving, and he was like, "Oh, you need 20% down." I was like, "No." I was like, "You don't. That's a myth. FHA, conventional, 3 to 5%. That's it. Average homeowners, 38 years old, and it's like average down payment is now like 6 to 8% or something." And he was like, "Really?" And he was so surprised. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, the number of times I see loan officers on social media talking about this, and my dad still has no idea, just goes to show that you can still reiterate the same information over and over. But if you
Mhm.
do it in a way that's generally just like, hey, if you didn't know, here's some info, instead of making it really hyper salesy, I think that is what that authenticity is. It's we want to see that you're here to actually help and provide information and be helpful for the sake of being helpful and helping other people, not for the sake of getting money in your own pocket.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, um, for a lot of people, the way to do that is just to focus on creating value on
Mhm,
social. And we talk about calls to action and making sure that you have a call to action at the end of your content. Um, and I think that the knee jerk reaction is to, if you're looking to buy a home, if you're looking to get a loan, call me. And that's fine. But I would
mhm,
say that you should try to create as much value as possible and just let those things naturally happen. I think about in my life, if I was
mhm,
going to move and I needed, let's not talk about the home aspect, but if I needed help moving, I know about 3 or 4 people that I could genuinely trust would show up to help me pack up and move.
mhm,
And they've never offered, they have never said, "Hey, if you ever end up moving, let me know and I'll come help you." But because they are people that have consistently shown that they, um, care, that they have consistently shown that they are willing to help others, that they
mhm,
have, they've built this sense of trust. For me, it's so easy for me to know that I could call on them, and I think it's the exact same thing when you're talking to your audience and trying to get clients.
mhm.
If
I
you
always say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that if you focus on building value and building trust rather than constantly call me, call me, call me, if you can create that environment of trust with your audience through your content, when they do need you, they will come to you because you're
Mhm.
building that trust.
Yeah. A thought I had recently that I think I wanna start communicating more widely is, I think that you should be using social media as an advice column and not like a commercial or a broadcast. Like, I'm trying to think of ways to frame it for people, because
I
it's
like
hard.
that.
Social media is really nebulous, but it's like if you're just constantly blasting, blasting, blasting all these sales and educational info, people are just gonna get overwhelmed and a little bored and whatever. But if you treat it like an advice column where you're like, "Hey, I got this question, let me answer it." Hey, if you're interested in community events, like you should be kind of, you don't have to be this news source necessarily, but you should treat it like you are the resource and the guide for people. And that doesn't mean that you're sitting there going, hey, you should buy XXX. It means you're saying, hey, if you have questions about knowing what agent is right to work with, or if you have questions about how to find a home inspector you can trust, well, I always ask my agent friends because I ask who they used. And if the agent trusted the home inspector, you know that that's going to be a good home inspector. Like, just
Mhm.
talking about actually valuable information. And I think when we say provide value, people get into that salesy mode of, oh, my value is the products I have to offer. Actually,
Exactly.
no. Your value is your expertise, and usually the expertise that you can't Google. So if I can Google that I don't need 20% for a down payment, are you really adding value? Or is your value the, hey, let me talk about this person who had 20% saved up, but we didn't actually put 20% down on the house, and here's how that saved them money. That I cannot figure out through Google. Tell me that. Tell me that story. And that exactly word, stories. I think your stories and your personal anecdotes, and that is the value you're bringing, because I don't wanna have to go to Google and find some stranger that I don't know to give me advice on the biggest home, biggest purchase of my life, potentially. I wanna talk to somebody who I feel like is a friend. Like, I can name 10 of our users right now who I see every single day on social, and I kind of consider them friends. And they get on our boot camp, and I'm like, "Hey guys," and they're like, "Hi, have we met?" And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I just see your content every day, so I feel close to you."
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do with your audience and with social media is by being consistent and being personable and just being a person, you're going to see that they're like, "Oh my gosh, this person's cool." And they talk about this enough that when I have a question, you're the person I want to go to, not Google.
Yeah. That was definitely, I think, the biggest shift trend wise. Um,
Mhm.
and looking into 2025, one thing that I think we're going to see more of, something that we've seen a lot this year, is AI on social.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so AI is such an interesting uh, element when it comes to social media because there is value there
Mhm.
if done properly, but so many people are either doing it incorrectly or using it, in my opinion, as bad actors to try and drive as much revenue as possible. Um, like, I just think it's so important that the average person understands how to detect an AI generated post. Um,
Yes.
because I am concerned that if someone starts following a loan officer and we see that and they see that loan officer engaging with an AI generated post, this is just one reason that I worry about the potential for that hurting credibility. Um, I was telling
Interesting.
you, I was telling you, my feed right now on Facebook has become the dearth of social media, and one of the big reasons for that is how easy it is to trick people on Facebook into
Mhm.
believing content. And when you have, we've talked about how the social media, the audience on Facebook tends to skew older,
Mhm.
and um, in avoiding ageism as much as possible, whenever I look through the comments of an AI generated post, the ones who believe it tend to be a little bit older. Now, what I think is actually happening is that if you don't have like the worse your eyesight gets, the more realistic that an AI image looks because they already generally
Mhm.
look pretty realistic.
They
Um,
do. It can be hard to tell
yeah,
sometimes.
it's the fine details of an AI generated post, like the fingers. And AI is getting better at generating hands, which has always been the telltale sign. Um,
Mhm.
but the the thing about AI generated content is that um, I do wonder if if platforms are going to start moderating that far more heavily because
I
I
really
think that they are a really a bane on the existence of the usability of a platform.
Well, yeah, I think at first they were kinda like, "Oh, we'll take anything that gets engagement," right? The social platforms are all about getting you to stay on the platform and getting you to actively engage. That is their bread and butter. And so anything that comes on the platform and this is why I sometimes have a little bit of problem, especially around, like, politics, because I think they learned that serving controversial content gets people fired up and gets them to engage. And so
Mhm.
it puts us in a lot of times in this echo chamber of, "Oh, you saw this, which means you'll probably like this or you won't like this. So I'm only going to show you the thing you'll either really like or really not like instead of the neutral in between stuff." And while that's good for hyper personalization, it can be bad. And like you said, with AI, I think that when people start using it, they tend to go for that weird, controversial things that are going to spark engagement. And in some ways, to some people, that makes it more obvious. And you're like, oh, this is really clearly AI because what is this photo? This is weird. But in a lot of ways, I think it also makes it hard to recognize. And especially for people who didn't grow up with technology, like the internet is about as old as I am, and I watched it evolve through my lifetime. I can't
Mhm.
imagine someone who grew up with no internet, no phones even. Like, my parents were like, "We didn't have cell phones growing up. What are you talking about?" And to them, I'm like, "This is amazing that you can be on social media and be as adaptable as you are with learning with how much this changes." But then, of course, you're not gonna look at AI and immediately distrust it because 'cause you've grown up with these media sources that have been a lot more trustworthy, right? A lot more, like, their news stations and media and the things they're putting out are verified and coming from trusted experts. And I think that's a really hard thing about social media is that everyone can make almost anything now. And so it makes it hard to figure out who to trust and why. And that's why I think video is so important because video is one of the hardest things to replicate with AI. And when you're on and it's your face and your voice and your words and your advice, that is so much more memorable and it's going to stand out in the sea of stock footage AI stuff and in the sea of, quote posts from some faceless person that you're like, okay, I don't really know who that is. Are they an
Mhm.
expert or are they some random person that had a TikTok go viral once and maybe they know what they're talking about, but maybe they don't. And that's where I think our audience in particular has a very strong niche of expertise and the ability to get on video and say, "Hey, I have 20 years of experience. Let me talk to you about this." Like that is so valuable in today's day and age to be able to have those stories to draw upon, and I think that's why that resonates so heavily.
Yeah, I agree. The value of video, I just can't be understated. The reach potential, the way that it cuts through so much of the garbage that's on social media. You know, we talked about authenticity, we talked about trust. In my opinion, there is no better way to showcase that than through video content. Now, with that being said, AI is also starting to come for and it's already found its way into video content. I know that there's a number of people that that use like AI tools to chop up longer form content into smaller clips. I'm personally not a fan of that approach, just in the sense that um, while the AI can generally be pretty good at detecting, like, oh, this is the section where they're talking about this, a lot of times it will leave out context. And there's nothing
Mm,
like filming a 25-minute podcast and then it's giving the AI cuts out a 90-second clip from minute 22 that's referencing something from minute 5
right.
and the context is missing and your audience goes, I don't even know what we're talking about here. Um, so I'm like not a huge fan of of that. But also you were mentioning before we jumped on seeing more like AI, like so much AI content. Like I'm seeing that people are there's like new apps where you can like create an AI clone of yourself.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I
Um,
have, like, the avatar things. A couple of the
mhm.
social platforms I think are trying to push that as well. I really just don't I especially for loan officers, it's something I really don't recommend. I mean, maybe if you are a big influencer who gets all these DMs and you want to kind of create that effect of being closer with your audience, but you just don't have the capacity, but you can have this bot or this avatar that sends messages. Okay, okay, like, if you're a YouTuber, sure, why not?
Mhm.
But as a trusted financial like, person, like, no, please don't. I just think it's only going to hurt people's trust in you if the AI ever says something that it shouldn't.
Yeah,
And I don't know that AI is even trained with compliance regulations in mind, and we have a very compliant industry that I wouldn't touch that, and I don't think your
this
compliance
is
people would want you touching that.
yeah, this I think is um the real concern,
Mhm.
especially in the mortgage industry, is that I think genuinely that uh if this AI avatar thing catches on. And I think the idea behind it, I think, is that the platforms are saying, look, people are nervous to be on camera, but video content generates more views and time on app. If we can create an opportunity for people to create content, video content that has more engagement and more reach without actually putting their face on the app, them having to do the work, so be it. Like, I don't care. That's great. Um, I see this potentially being something that becomes a compliance rule.
Mhm.
That presenting you in your authentic self, I think, could potentially down the line become um, a compliance rule. So don't lean on, for those we hear from people, you and I hear from people all the time in our coaching calls, in um, our boot camp. Oh, well, I don't like being on video. Don't take that avenue because I do see in the future that getting eliminated in some capacity.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you have a profile photo that's 30 years old. and then you show up to your meeting and you look different than your photo. And that's not inherently, I know a lot of people do it because you feel more confident that way. But I think what it does is it creates like a disjointed expectation of like people
Or
see
it
the
just
photo.
hurts your trust. It hurts trust.
Exactly. Like it creates this idea of like, oh, here's the photo, here's who I'm expecting to show up to my meeting. You show up, oh, they look really different. That wouldn't have been a problem if your photo looked the same because they would have known what to expect when they showed up. They're not sitting here judging your appearance. They're just like, who am I going to, especially in a virtual world, right? Like if you had a photo of Ben and then you showed up, I'd be like, this looks like a different person. What's going on? Like
Most people say we look identical.
no, well, I see the difference, but you're brothers, right? So like, but just an example, right? It feels like, oh, this isn't who I expected to show up, and that does hurt that trust and that credibility. And so same thing with I think being online and using AI or using old photos, or you might feel, I know a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm too old for this, or I don't like how I look on camera.
Mhm.
But it's something I really want to try to help people overcome because none of us really look like how we look on camera. Like no one is sitting there going, "Ah, I am ready all the time and I look
Right.
glamorous." I mean, maybe some influencers and bless them. I wish I had that confidence. But I'm like, most people don't feel that way. But when you do it anyway, that's the vulnerability that brings that authenticity that makes people say, wow, that's really cool that, they're getting on the video and they're doing this every day or every week, whatever the consistency is. I know who this is. I know what their voice sounds like. I know what their face looks like. And if I were to get on a video call with them, I know what I'm getting. I know how they speak. I know their advice from their videos and they seem like someone I'd really want to work with. So okay, let me do that. I think that is so much better than, only posting faceless content, which is when you don't put your face in your videos or when you only show like photos and text. I'm just like it's just a snapshot. It doesn't give you the full picture of who someone is. And when you're trying to build trust with an audience that you want them to come and work with you and trust you, video is the easiest way to make them say, "Hey, they seem like a cool person who also knows a lot. Let me ask them my questions and let me use them for my business."
Yeah. I 100% agree. And
Mhm.
it all comes back to that authenticity and that trust. So,
Totally. And I guess as one last point, just because we haven't gotten around to it and I know we're wrapping up, but one of the biggest trends we're seeing going to the new year is people getting creative and experimental with their content. And
mhm,
it's something we've noticed too. I think when you take social media too seriously, it can almost hurt you a little bit. So when we've started doing these funny skits, these kind of I call them fun Friday videos. So I'm like every Friday I try to do something fun that just, it can be doesn't have to be anything serious, but if it's talking about videos in a fun way or it's sharing like a pain point that a lot of our users face, we get the most engagement on those, absolutely, hands down. And then that helps our reach, that helps our views, and that is one of the biggest trends that these companies, Hootsuite and all these social media companies, are reporting. Is they're saying that people who are doing the experimental content and getting creative and being fun with it are seeing so much more engagement and results from that content. And so I know that that's out of a lot of our audience's comfort zone because they go, "Oh, like my coworkers are gonna laugh at me or my kids are gonna laugh at me." But I'm like, but if you can be brave enough to just do it, it doesn't have to be crazy. If you don't like dancing, you don't have to dance on camera. That's not what I'm saying. But find the things that you like, genuinely like, either talking about, doing, posting, and then just post it. Like Brandon, you love movies. I love books. It makes its way into almost every conversation. That's something we can be posting about more. And I think that we would find the people who go, wow, okay, I like social media and I also like books, that they're going to love my content, right? Everyone who
mhm.
loves movies and loves social media, they're going to love your content. People can want financial advice, but then also say, hey, this person also golfs all the time, or this person lives near where I live and talks about all the community events. Give people other reasons to want to watch your content and to get to know you as a person from your content. So that's just where
Yeah.
I'll leave it for the week.
And and to, put a cherry on top, when it comes to mortgage content, we hear people ask us this all the time. Well, everyone's talking about the same thing. Is it going to get tiring if everyone's talking about the same thing? And it's like, yes, if everyone just sat in front of their camera and talked about the exact same thing, um, like here's what an FHA, here's a conventional, like and just describing these things, that would get extremely boring. But there's two things that you have at your disposal. One is the creativity aspect, and the other is you. You are a unique individual And if you can bring creativity into that and find ways to connect to people, share your personality, share your personal stuff, it goes back to that December content challenge. I think that that's where people are going to find a way to take something that is, pretty common, or something that everyone else is talking about, and find a new way to talk about it. Those stories or experiences that are unique to you, all those things are a way to make that content stand out and be something people want to engage with. So
Mhm.
good
And I
luck.
think we don't have to overcomplicate it. I think that's
Mhm.
the other thing people get like, "Well, I'm not very creative and I can't come up with these, you know, 10-minute skits and whatever." It's like, that doesn't have to. If it's
Yeah,
just whatever when you're talking with a friend and you're like, "You know what would be funny?" That anything that follows that sentence, make it into your
do
content.
that.
Do that because that
Yes.
is exactly what your friends are gonna be like, "Yeah, that was funny." Your coworkers are gonna be like, "Okay, that was funny because I get it." Whatever it is, those conversations when you're like, "It would be funny if someone tried that." That someone should be you. And so go do it. So don't get too complicated with it. You don't have to be something you're not, but that's what we mean by being authentic and creative and all these words we're throwing out. It's just like you said, Brandon, you are the differentiator in your content. And so doing things the way you would do them, not the way you think other people should do them, is going to be where you find your success.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Ashley. I think we'll wrap up here. Thanks, everyone,
Yeah.
for popping in, and we will see you next Thursday for office hours. We'll be chatting about social media trends and answering your questions.
Yeah. Feel free to DM us any questions throughout the week, and we'd be happy to jump on and answer them. And yeah, everyone have a great week.
Bye.